So I think it seems safe to say that the system of governance and kind of overall system that the Prophet Yusuf had gained an administrative role in was one that was unjust, plagued with different forms of elitism and corruption. So is there any more discussion that can be had kind of in relation to modern day discourses of working within the system in US politics, for example? Because it seems that up to this point, throughout the halaqas, we've gained a lot of clarity on the principle of never compromising. But I think this surah might be suggesting that, even there's some nuance to the extent to that. I could be mistaken, but so I was just wondering if there's any more to say on that.
Yeah, this is a really interesting question. The reason it's really interesting is that so many in the Islamic tradition cite this precise point that Yusuf worked was to say that this is evidence that you can work with an unjust government if you can do good. But I think as stated, in just flat like that, without further theorizing or qualifying, that's a very misleading point. Because Yusuf didn't just work with an unjust government in any capacity, He presented the king was a favor. He interpreted the dream. And when the king said, well, what do we do? He basically said, put me in charge and give me the authority. Now, if you can do that with an unjust ruler, and that king, by the way, is not necessarily, we don't know, other than some guesses about that king's name, we don't know how unjust or just he was. I mean, we just assume that they were all unjust to some extent or another. But what I think the emphasis is that he positions himself so that he can do good. So he doesn't say, okay, well, I'll take any position, just get me out of prison. No, he actually says, in order for me to do something, give me the authority, and he then, and so, but this is, there's a difference about serving American government and so on, because your question is, well, how about working for the American government? And my answer to this is actually the following. The issue is serving a just, whether you serve justice or not, or you are able to do justice or not. There are so many Muslim governments that you can work for, where it will be practically impossible to serve justice. I can tell you, if you work for the Egyptian government, you will be part of an apparatus of injustice through and through. It is far more corrupt than anything America has ever seen, or anything that England has ever seen, or anything that so many non-Muslim governments have ever seen. The same can be said about Saudi government. The same can be said about the Emirati government. The same can be said about the Syrian government. I mean, sadly, so many so-called Muslim governments are so unjust that I would be happy to serve a non-Muslim, somewhat just government over them at any time. The question, and so in terms of the degrees of justice that are available over the world, do you work for the Chinese government, which has a Holocaust against Muslims, or the American government, which compared to the Chinese government is far more just? So justice is, you have to compare the amounts of justice that exist in the world. And the fact of the matter is whether we like it or not, in terms of what human beings have been able to achieve right now as we live right now, is that many aspects of the American government, many aspects of the British government, many aspects of the Swiss government are far more just than anything that exists in the world. And so the big question is that, well, what do you want me to do, and can I achieve justice? You know, if you tell me serve in the Trump administration where I sit with a bunch of Christian bigots and come up with a new paradigm for human rights that's based in Judeo-Christian tradition, then no. You know, I'm not an idiot. I'm not going to play that legitimate role. If you tell me go serve on a commission for religious freedom, but I have the right to be the sole dissenter and to protest that you're not treating Muslims fairly, yeah, I'll do it. Because I have the power to dissent. And I have the power to embarrass administration because they're not treating Muslims fairly. You know, if someone tells me, we want to appoint you as a judge in a court that does torts, no, I wouldn't do it because the system is so corrupt. I mean, the ability to do any good in a personal injury type cases. But if someone says, I'll appoint you on a court of appeals or, you know, a constitutional court, state court, where you can actually make a difference, or even not that, even in a criminal court where I can actually, you know, do some justice in, you know, not allowing rich lawyers to, you know, control everything and poor lawyers to have no fighting chance, where I can instruct the jury and achieve some semblance of fairness. So it is that level of sophistication that is required. It's not just, you know, I feel that the more ignorant people are, the less sophisticated they are. And this world that we live in brutally punishes the ignorant. This world is merciless with those who are ignorant and unintelligent. And the sooner Muslims wake up to this reality, the better it will be.